Today, we'll be understanding about the roles of ingredients used for cooking. So when we all know that the ingredients that we use for cooking is very, very important and it kind of resembles or it kind of showcases the place that we come from. Now, what are these ingredients that I'm talking about? So today, you'll be understanding about the roles of spices, pulses, cereals, and seasonings. So we'll be going in depth and in details about the spices that is being used in cooking. So first one, the learning objective. Here you'll be understanding the roles of herbs, certain spices, and the seasoning foods, and also additional seasonings. You'll also be understanding the advantage of certain herbs and certain seasonings that is used in cooking, which can enhance the flavor in it. The outcome is that you will be also be able to understand the different spices that we are used in the cooking, different kind of herbs, different kind of cereals, pulses that is widely used in different countries for different methods of cooking. Now, when I talk about herbs and spices, the first thing that comes in your mind is the one that you can see your parents, your mom cooking in the kitchen. When she makes a very nice food, you can get a very nice aroma that comes from the kitchen. Have you ever wondered what are these ingredients that causes a very beautiful aroma? It is nothing but these spices. Spices are basically used in a very small quantity in cooking, but it gives a very great aroma and very great flavors in certain foods. I am sure that you all have tried biryani. Biryani is basically an Indian food that basically loaded with lots and lots of spices, and it was also made with rice. And a very typical rice is used, that is the basmati rice. It is an Indian long grain rice. So when I talk about biryani or when you've eaten the biryani, the first flavor that you get in your mouth is the flavor of certain spices. These are the very key spices that is used to enhance the flavor of the food. You may also belong to certain regions in the country where there might be certain spices that is used particularly in your region, which is used in particularly in the food that is prepared in particular region, which can enhance the food properties. So let's go in detail and understand what are these spices. Now, there are certain ingredients. The spices can be in the form of seeds, it can be in the form of nuts, it can be in the form of flour, or it can be in the form of leaf. So different varieties and different parts of the plants and the bark is used as a spices, which basically gives a lots and lots of flavor to the food. Now, they also improve the food value with a respect of nutritional and fiber. They do not contribute a lot of nutritional value because it is used in a very small amount, but it also contributes a minimal amount of nutrition and fibers to the food that has been eaten. Now, these are certain spices which is very, very, you cannot even imagine to cook a food without any kind of a spice. Now, what kind of the spices be? Let me give you an example. It can be as simple as black peppercorn. It can be as simple as cardamom, cinnamon sticks, bay leaf, cloves, or sometimes it can also be nutmeg or maize flour. As simple as it, dessert, which will be obviously using a saffron. So these are the spices that are used in a minimal quantity to enhance the flavor. Now, these spices is basically a dried seed, fruit, root. It can also be the bark of a tree, vegetative substances used nutritionally in significant quantities as a food additives for the purpose of flavoring. Now, when we use this, it is basically to give a vibrancy of the color. Now, what kind of a color? If you see saffron, saffron gives a very palish and bright yellow in color. So that is a usage of this, and also it gives a very delicacy of aroma. But then when we eat certain spices, it kind of be so pungent that it kind of overpowers the food. Now, for sure, you'd all have tried cardamom, right? So when we eat cardamom, when we just take a bite of one whole cardamom, it is so pungent that it can mask the flavor of other food. That's the reason it should always be used in a very minimal quantity. Now, why are these spices used? As I mentioned, spices are basically used for getting a delicious flavor in the food. Not only the flavor, also for the aroma and also for a hint and pinch of color which has been arrived due to using of these spices in it. Next one, We not only the spices, we'll also understand what is the roles of spices in Indian cookery. Different regions use different spices to enhance the flavor. Now, let's say we are from India. In India, the spices are abundantly used in most of the dishes to enhance the flavor. When the same spices come in the form of French cuisine, the spices are used very minimalistically. It's because they do not want to overpower the food. So in India, India is known for a resource of spices because here we get wide amount of spices which is locally available and it is most commonly used in many of our food. So spices is used in cooking has never been a question in especially in Indian cuisine because this is the one that gives the most aromatic flavor in it. Spices have been traded for over 7,000 years and have played a very major role, especially in the development of civilization. If you know the southern part of India, that is in Kerala, Kochi, it's known for the trade of spices. Lots and lots of spices is being found. For example, they get black peppercorns, cinnamon sticks, cardamom, maize flour. The same thing if you go to the northern part of the India, that is Kashmir, the saffron is widely produced and it's a kind of a resource that has been found in Kashmir. So different region of different parts of India has a very different kind of a spices which we may know or we may not be known yes as of now, which is still being used in many of the culinary uses. Wars has been fought and the lands has been explored and the colonized is being attempt to find new ways for obtaining the spices from the Orient and gaining a control of established routes. The great thing is that availability of spices that we have right now and this spices in Indian cooking, it gives a very distinctive depth of color and flavor for the food. As I told you a very example, that is imagine you guys are having a biryani. Biryani is a very aromatic rice flavored dish which actually has meat in it. It can be either poultry or red meat which has been cooked with aromatic spices to enhance the flavor of the food and particularly rice is used that is basmati rice. So different spices like a basic spices which includes even the powder, we make the spices, we either use it as a whole or we also use the spices in the form of powder so that it can be easily mixed along with the food and it can enhance the flavor. In case if you're using a whole spices, we ensure that the essential oil is being taken out from these spices which is being fried in a fat. When I say fried in a fat, kind of oils and animal fats like ghee or clarified butter is being used to obtain and to extract the flavors out of these spices. So these are the spices that is being widely used. And we also understand the respect of our cooking. We also respect each and every spices that has been obtained so that we can enjoy the cooking and we can also enjoy the food. Using a right spice to the right food is very important. Now let's say we are making a kheer. Kheer is nothing but an Indian rice pudding which actually has a milk, sugar, and it is actually basically made with rice byproduct. When we're making a kheer, usually for sweet, Indian sweets, cardamom spice is used as a flavoring agent, or sometimes even cloves are also used as a flavoring agent. Understanding the spices, understanding the character of spices, and using a right spice to enhance the flavor of the food is very important. Not all the spice will actually match with all kind of a food. So you should always know the characteristic to understand the aroma and to also understand which spice matches for which kind of a flavor is very key important factor which we must all know to in order to ensure that the food that is being prepared has to be very delicious and flavorful. Spices, they play a very integral role in cooking. Many spices also have certain medicinal values. For example, let's say we have a cough or a cold. For sure, we use sometimes whole black pepper, which has been eaten, which has been crushed and eaten, so that the pungent and the spice hotness of the whole black pepper can clarify the throat. So there are certain spices, many of such examples are there, which is used also as a medicinal value not only for the flavoring but also it can have, has a lots and lots of benefit for a body. Sometimes you'd also heard people saying do not consume lot of cardamom. The reason because cardamom is high in heat, it can increase the body heat within the, it can increase the temperature. So eating certain spices too much is also too bad, so you should always consume minimalistically. And also it has certain kind of a medicinal value. Sometimes we also make homemade remedies which uses these kind of a spices. In use, ground spices do have certain well established advantage over the form of seasoning. We primarily depend upon the spices for flavors and also for the fragrance, that is nothing but aromatic values, as well as for the color, for the preservations, and for inherent the medicinal qualities in it. Especially in Indian cuisine, spices play a very, very vital role in the world, and also India is kind of a source where we trade certain spices to all over the world. So this is how the Indian spices are. Let me name few Indian spices that is very commonly used, as you can see in the picture that has been predicted in the PPT, such as we have bay leaf, we have cinnamon stick, we have black cardamom, we have green cardamom, we have nutmeg, we also have the whole black pepper, we have star anise, we have cloves, we also have the black cloves, we also have stone flower, right? So these are the spices. Saffron is widely produced, and also maize flour. So these are the spices that is abundantly and widely found in India, and it is also produced and it is also being traded for all over the world. This is about the Indian spices. Next, we'll also understand the right way to use the spices in cookery. Same recipes cannot be cooked by when I give a recipe and when I ask 10 people to cook the recipes, obviously the flavor and the taste can vary for all 10 people, because same recipes cooked by different people always taste different. The reason is because they might have different seasoning, they might also reduce or increase the quantity of spices, taste, and flavor. So that's a reason, keeping this in mind, understanding the right way to use certain spices is always way too important being a chef. Cooking is a skill and art which is one can learn by experimenting and using different kind of spice and herbs. When we're cooking initially, for sure we might add too much or we might also add too less of spices and herbs. But when you keep on cooking and when you keep on experimenting, for sure one fine day we'll get a proper recipes with a balance of all the flavors equally. And that is how even the cooking also was formed. In the sense, that is how people experimented and then they came up with the right perfect recipes that has a blend of all the flavors and all the taste. That is why cooking is always a skill and art. Clear? Now, there is a whole range of spices to choose from. One has to know these spices and the correct usage. Not everyone can cook, and not everyone who cooks can be a chef. So this is a proverb that has always been used because usage of different ingredients and usage of different spices can actually vary from one person to other person. Spices add flavor. As I repeat again, they also add color, they also add taste to the dish. One has to always understand that the right way to use these spices is always important to get a balance of everything. When we add too much of spices, we kind of overpower and we overmark the flavor of other ingredients. When we add too less spices, we do not get as much as flavor that has been required for that particular dish. So being a chef, when you're cooking, you should always know the right amount to use these spices so that you get a proper benefits and you also get the proper aroma and flavor from all these ingredients. There are a whole range of spices to choose from. The one that we always know, like the different spices that is being used. As I told you earlier, the spices that is being used in India, the spices that is being used in different countries always vary based on its usage. Ways to add spices to the food for the maximum flavors. There's certain points that you should always remember. First one is use spices and herbs to improve the natural aroma of the food and do not mask the flavor. Do not add too much of spices and herbs which can only be overpowering the other flavors. Always add very less, not too less. Always add a few amount so that it can balance out the entire flavor from it. Crush the dry herbs. You'd have seen people crushing the kasuri methi Okay, or you can see people crushing some dry basil leaves or dry rosemary or dry oregano. The reason when you crush between your two palms, the essential oil and the essential flavor is being released out, which can enhance the flavor in the food. And always herbs are always added in the end so that you get a proper flavor and it doesn't overpower the other ingredients. Do not mix two strong flavored herbs together. Now, let's say we have rosemary and let's say we have a basil. These two are a very strong flavoring agent. When we add these two at equal amount, for sure these two will overpower the flavors of other ingredients. So always either add one pungent flavor and one minimal flavor so that you get a balance of both the things. While removing the spices and herbs from the container, use dry spoons. Please do not use wet spoons or do not use your bare hands, because when you're using the bare hands and the bare food, this can actually what happens is that it can overpower the flavor, and also more importantly when you're using this wet spoon, it can also cause contamination and it can also lead to the spoilage of these herbs. So always use dry spoons as mentioned. To get a blended flavor, add herbs at the beginning of the cooking, and also but if you want a distinctive flavor, always add in the end. So different ways of adding the herbs: either add initially after adding any kind of fat, or finish it off in the end so that you get a light mellow flavor in the cooking. So these are the herbs and these are the ways of adding herbs and spices to enhance the cooking. Whole spice are the best to use in dishes that takes a long way to cook, as it can also discharge the flavors slowly, and ground herbs and spices give a flavor to easily. So when you're using a whole spices, it can give a very strong flavor, but at the same time when you're using a powder form of these spices, it you will know how much to be added, and also you can reduce the quantity so that it doesn't overpower the other ingredients. Food that are not cooked and you're using a cold food for marination, you would have seen there may be a lot of marinations in French cooking. So we use herbs and spices for marination. Please do not use it too much, okay, or too less. You always use it less, and whenever you're adding herbs and spices for the cold food, add little extra so that you can extract as much as flavors as been required. While following the certain recipes, if you want to increase the quantity two times and do not double the amount of spices. Like for example, you're cooking for 25 people, and if you have to increase the quantity to 50 people, that doesn't mean you also increase the quantity of the spices. Just add little extra, not too much, just add little bit extra, and it can well balance out all the flavors, because spices just gives aroma and herbs. So this is how the usage of using a right way of spices and herbs are very important in the methods of cooking. So the next topic, that is the uses of culinary seeds. There's certain seeds that are widely used in cooking, and there are a lot of seeds. Like for example, there might be a byproduct of it. Seeds, in the sense, it can include cereals and pulses. So we should continue this topic of cereals and pulses in the next coming class. And by now, let me take a conclusion of what we understood till now. We understood about different types of herbs, different types of spices, the right way of using these herbs and spices, and also, especially in the Indian culinary uses, how the spices is being used widely is what we learned for today's class. Thank you. Have a nice day.